From fully boasting about his use of steroids and getting away with it, to forfeiting his championship over a positive test, the UFC fighters react very differently when it comes to PEDs. Let's talk about Chael Sonnen's drug use. The controversy surrounding testosterone replacement therapy and its use in MMA is a forever hot topic. Well, in athletics, the use of performance-enhancing drugs is very prevalent. After passing drug tests, many talented UFC athletes were found using PEDs. Some of them, though, managed to evade the UFC's drug testing procedure. Chael Sonnen, a retired UFC competitor, acknowledged and defended using PEDs while competing in mixed martial arts, but still, he admitted it. Now, that's a little concerning because the man is regarded as one of the best MMA competitors who has never claimed a proper title in the sport. In the end, his battle with Lyoto Machida at Bellator 222 effectively put a stop to Sonnen's UFC career. Even though he didn't take home the biggest prize in Bellator or the UFC, he was still one of the most entertaining competitors in UFC annals. Chael Sonnen, being the bully that he is, even praises other competitors who possess the same talent. He also has a history of failing substance tests while competing in the UFC. Consequently, the Nevada State Sports Commission suspended him for 2 years. But let's see what he had to say about the whole thing himself during a recent interview with Chael Sonnen on the Jim Rome Show, which will air on Showtime on Wednesday night. The debate unintentionally grabbed attention yet again. They ended up having a panel discussion about performance-enhancing drugs, fueled partly by Major League Baseball's recent findings and potential penalties in the event of a positive drug test result. And Sonnen had some opinions. Rome focused on the guy a lot during the conversation as well. The 45-year-old tested positive for high amounts of testosterone in 2010, following his matchup with Anderson Silva at UFC 117. We all remember the dramatic times those were, right? But Jim being Jim went straight to the heart of the topic. Then again, it has been over a decade. He directly questioned the mixed martial artist if he was attempting to take the edge off, trying to cheat, and how he got caught. Naturally, the man didn't take it that well. Chael Sonnen retorted that he wasn't cheating, but did openly acknowledge that he had used the substance.
Testosterone's not illegal, which we've all found out. It's perfectly legal. I followed all the rules as I understood them. And yes, I took it to get an edge. I would never take anything if I didn't think it would help me.
The only difference? He claims to have done so in order to gain an advantage. But then he went ahead and refuted claims that he had tested positive for increased testosterone for the offense in 2010. The man shared that it's just not true, and instead, he had varying testosterone to epitestosterone ratio, which is legal. The illegal part is having rather high amounts of testosterone. Then why was he suspended, you ask? Well, according to Sonnen, he was given a 6-month suspension due to a disclosure problem. What? The whole thing led to us all learning that it's not unlawful to use testosterone. That's completely legal, according to Chael, because he adhered to all the rules as he understood them. But then again, he did use them to give himself an advantage. The man stated that if he didn't believe something would benefit him, he would never administer it in the first place. But what does the California State Athletic Commission have to say about all that? Well, if I'm being honest with you guys, the man's statement isn't entirely a lie. The executive director of the CSAC, George Dodd, talked about Chael's drug test results in a statement in September 2010. He stated that Sonnen's post-fight drug test showed a high testosterone to estrogen ratio, which is, drumroll please, indicative of steroid use, or as we like to call it, performance-enhancing drugs. Ultimately, a 16.9 to 1 ratio of testosterone to epitestosterone was found in research that was made public. Male testosterone ratios are typically 1 to 1, while the World Anti-Doping Agency considers amounts as high as 4 to 1 to be acceptable. State athletic commissions, like the one in Nevada, will even tolerate a 6 to 1 ratio before declaring the exam a failure. And after taking all those numbers in, it's crystal clear that Sonnen's levels were unquestionably higher than all of those restrictions. Then why is his statement partially true? Well, during a committee hearing in December 2010, the focus shifted away from Sonnen's high testosterone levels. Instead, it went towards his failure to disclose that he had been prescribed testosterone replacement therapy by a doctor to treat a condition known as hypogonadism. So, when the man appeared before the commission, the topic discussed wasn't his use of PED, it was his failure to properly file for and receive permission to use testosterone injections prior to his fight, which conveniently works in his favor as well. But since he failed to disclose his treatment, the commission ultimately decided to suspend him for 6 months at the time. But was that the first time? Well, not exactly. According to Chael Sonnen, he got away with a lot of substances. During the podcast, Sonnen and Steve-O discussed Soviet athletes using PEDs. But the former UFC fighter admitted to the Jackass cast member that he had heavily used narcotics while competing in MMA. Yep, he's gone from the game, so now he can't admit it. He stated that he doesn't know if anyone has failed more drug tests than me. But on the flip side, he continued that he also doesn't know if anyone has gotten away with more narcotics than him. Chael Sonnen asserted that the UFC had not discovered his extensive substance use. He claims that they caught him using 7 drugs, but he was doing at least 17. Well, there goes my faith in drug tests and athletes. But how did he get away with it? Sonnen claims that the UFC drug tests aren't as reliable as they seem to be. Well, that's a little obvious now, right? Chael Sonnen has spoken out a little about using PEDs. After failing 2 drug tests in 2014 and having 2 years of his MMA career squandered, he once came off as unapologetic, and the man has numerous problems with the UFC substance test, which at the moment seems pretty justified. Now for the kicker. The man obviously isn't alone in his use of PEDs. Next in line is Royce Gracie. For the first time in 11 years, UFC Hall of Famer Royce Gracie entered the cage in 2006 to face Matt Hughes. The battle between Gracie and the then welterweight king is regarded as the low point of Gracie's career because it ended in a first-round TKO, which, as you'll admit, is pretty embarrassing. So what does the jiu-jitsu industry's golden child do to maintain his reputation? Schedule a repeat of his thrilling battle with Kazushi Sakuraba, of course. That too didn't exactly do the man any favors, and so Gracie turned to the anabolic steroid nandrolone for some help in the fight. This time, after 3 rounds of combat, Gracie was declared the victor as well. Yep, despite the positive drug test, the win was never disputed. Make it make sense, guys, but the harm it inflicted on the man's legacy is still irrefutable, although some would disagree when you consider his history of defeating powerful opponents. Still, at the end of the day, a failed drug test is a failed drug test. Then there's Tim Sylvia. The now 46-year-old was a heavyweight who had never lost and carried the UFC title on his back in 2003. But then, the Maniac tested positive for stanozolol following his first championship defense against Gan McGee. The defending champion acknowledged using the substance to enhance his physique, but he believed that because he had stopped using it before the fight, it would have left his system. That didn't exactly play in his favor. Even after the $10,000 fine and a 6-month suspension on Sylvia, the man went beyond the penalties to express his regret and offered to forfeit his championship, a genuine display of class. A stark opposite of Phil Baroni's statement, "I want to see the strongest, not the cleanest." That's all from Chael and his use of PEDs.